thank you so much for coming on today to talk about the case. Now, I've described the case at a high level, but what more can you add? What can you tell me about the alleged harassment that took place in this case and how it impacted your client?
This case is really about abuse of power, not just the alleged abuse of power from Mr. Kakfwi, who was my client's mentor, because she was a scholar in the prestigious Trudeau Scholarship Program, but also abuse of power in the Trudeau Foundation. We're talking about a very powerful organization that has $150 million of taxpayer money, actually, and is stacked with some of the most powerful people in Canada. There's judges, there's lawyers, there's bankers, there's politicians, media personalities. Um, the Prime Minister's brother sits on the board of directors. And the case is not just about what happened to my client in terms of being abused. It's about what happened afterwards. The Trudeau Foundation didn't take it seriously. They dismissed her. And then they tried to cover it up and muzzle her and silence her and have refused to do the right thing since day one.
Yeah, there were a number of incidents. I read the statement of claim where her report to senior leadership at the foundation was minimized, where she was put in situations where she would continue to have contact with Mr. Kakfwi, although I think he was removed as her mentor. He was still attending certain events. What can you
That's right.
tell me about some of those incidences and the response that the foundation gave to her when she went to senior leadership to make these complaints?
Well, one thing that's really important to note is that at the time the incident happened, the alleged sexual touching and sexual harassment, um, the Trudeau Foundation did not have a sexual harassment policy in place, which is pretty outrageous
Yeah, I
considering.
mean, we're talking about this was 2018 when this happened. I think
Yes,
large
they didn't have.
organizations have policies like that.
Yeah, they didn't have a sexual harassment policy. And this is an organization that is dealing with a lot of students, a lot of vulnerable people. My client is First Nation. She's a survivor of childhood sexual trauma. She is someone who's always advocated for women. And, specifically, she was recruited by the foundation to apply for a scholarship because they liked her work. They liked what she was representing. They liked her voice,
Yeah,
but they
and
didn't
let's
have the
let's talk
policy.
about that for a second, because I think there's some irony to me here in the connection between what the complainant was actually studying, which was violence. This is what her scholarship was in. It was violence towards Indigenous women, and the foundation expressed this interest in this topic, but then they had this reaction to her bringing forward complaints that appears, at least in the statement of claim, to be quite dismissive of those complaints. What can you tell me about the irony there?
Yeah, I mean, it's outrageous. So when she reported the misconduct, she was initially dismissed. She was accused of exaggerating. And then when they realized she was serious, they focused solely on trying to pretty much cover the whole thing up. She met with a billionaire. There was a billionaire who was part of the foundation at the time, and they met at like a coffee shop, and he tried to convince her to sign an NDA. And we're talking about a student, a vulnerable student with no money, who,
Hmm.
if she doesn't get her funding from the foundation, will not be able to
Right,
finish her studies,
right,
being told by the most powerful people to keep her mouth shut.
right.
And meanwhile, she's studying sexual harassment
Yeah, it's
and
so
trying to
ironic.
help girls and women.
Kathryn, we've got to go to commercial break, but we will continue this conversation right after.